I think a mascot is the perfect connector between the fans and the athletes. I've been Viktor since my freshman year of high school, so this is my 7th year as Viktor. And now it's like a second instinct. I know exactly what I'm gonna do at that time. Looking back, when I was 14, I never expected we would be traveling to Florida to compete as a mascot. It's an experience I will never forget. Without my performance as Viktor, I wouldn't be a mascot for another team. Mascotting is like teaching in ways. You can make someone laugh way more without saying anything than you could with saying a whole paragraph of words. The costume adds that layer of confidence that can go on and transform into myself as Jacob. I'm not Viktor and Viktor's not me. You're always in character. If you're in costume, there's never an off switch. There's no bench as a mascot.
Talking about that skin, how hot is it in there? Welcome to the world of sports. My name is Lewis Helm and I'm a student and soccer player at Grandview University. Each week, I sit down with athletes and professionals from across the sports industry to talk about their careers and their paths into sports, but also their beliefs, values, and perspectives.
My guest in episode 18 is Jacob Butz. Jacob is a student at Grandview and also the university's mascot named Viktor. In our conversation, we speak about his passion for mascoting, his early beginnings as a high school freshman, and how he became one of the most successful collegiate mascots at the national tournament for mascots. Jacob also talks about how being a mascot ties in with his future as a teacher and how it feels to have all eyes on him in costume. Now, here's my conversation with Jacob Butz.
Let's go. Jacob, thank you so much for being here today.
Yeah, thank you.
That's so cool. You're actually the first person to reach out to me, which I really, really appreciate. I think what we'll talk about today, being a mascot, is a super cool and very unique perspective. So I'm super excited for that. And as always, I'd like to start with the question, in your case, what does it mean to you to be a mascot for sporting teams?
Yeah, I think being a mascot performer, first off, is more about the passion. I think if you're not passionate about something, you can't really cheer on and support what you're supposed to be supporting. So first, being passionate. And I think the big thing is also determination. I think there's going to be some times where maybe you didn't react the way you wanted to, and you look back on it and say, this is what I could have done instead. So finding ways where you can just be like, you know what, that was one game. We have the next game coming up next week. What can I do differently to better support the team or better support the fans in any way?
Do you have an example right away of how that process looked like?
Yeah, so my first game, I've been Viktor since my freshman year of high school. So this is my 7th year as Viktor. And the first few games, I didn't really know what to expect. It was kind of like a situation where, do I cheer at this moment? Do I show my frustration if we just threw a pick or if we gave up a fumble? So kind of thinking about what is the best way to go about it. And now it's like a second instinct. I know exactly what I'm going to do at that time. I'm going to find ways to engage the crowd, engage the cheer team, the dance team if we have them on the side, and then also just support the players. Obviously, we have some great athletes at Grandview University, so my biggest thing is, how can I support them? Obviously, I'm dressed up in this costume and I'm a very visible aspect, but we're here to support the team and to support their success and finding ways to interact with them while also recognizing this is their game. I'm not trying to get in the way, I'm just trying to cheer them on.
That's super interesting and something, I think what's not really on your mind instantly. Being Viktor, just for reference, the mascot of Grandview University, among other things, that's what you're a mascot for, which is crazy, because you said you started as a freshman in high school at I'm guessing very young age.
Oh yeah.
How did that even happen in the first place?
So I had my first appearance when I was 14. So my mom currently works here at Grandview, and she was seeing all these campus-wide emails from the dance coach at that time, Stacy Horton, who's now the director of cheer and dance. And it's basically like, hey, we need Viktor to be at the football game. Can someone please volunteer to be Viktor? So they didn't have someone who was the main person. It was just, let's pick up someone for this game, then we'll get someone new for next week. So my mom kind of asked me, she's like, do you want to be Viktor? And I at first was like, why? I was like, why me? I'm not even a student there. But then I gave it a shot and honestly fell in love with it. I think there's so many fun things to do with mascotting, and it's never going to be the same experience. Each game is going to be different. You're going to do some different dance, some different skit, some different prop usage, and that's what makes it fun. So starting off at 14, costume barely fit. We kind of joke around that I had to grow into the Viking costume. So 14, probably 3 or 4 inches shorter than I am now, and figuring out how can I make myself look big and confident while still being that 14-year-old who has gone to football games but never on the sidelines, never interacting with people. So the first few games were tough, but once we got out of the first season into the next season, I kind of was like, how can I up my performance? So just like athletes do, how they self-reflect and figure out like, oh, I could have done that pass better. I could have shot at this time or passed the ball. It's more of, should I have done something silly here to get the fans kind of like engaged, or should I have been more serious and been more game focused? So it takes a lot of time to get used to it, but I think where we've gotten to this point is it's basically just something that I do. I don't really think about what am I going to do here, what am I going to do here. It's kind of like I have my own playbook, and it's like, I've done all this before. There are so many different things I can throw in here. Let's just do it.
Yeah, which is, I guess, similar to, as you referenced, some athletic stuff where where with a lot of experience, it just becomes like an instinct or a second nature. I want to get back to you starting at 14, you said, right?
Yep, 14.
Was that scary?
It was very intimidating. I think, obviously, putting on the costume for the first time, I didn't know what to expect. I didn't know how to react. I didn't know how to interact. Do I interact with the athletes? Do I interact with the coaches? Do I interact with, who do I interact with? So putting on the costume for the first time, I still watch the game film that we have that's posted on Facebook, and I'm like, wow, that was bad. I was like, that performance was rough. But now I can compare that to where I'm at now and be like, there's a ton of growth. And without those rough experiences at the beginning, I don't think we would have gotten to the level where I'm at right now.
Which is super interesting, you talking about the performances, the level of things.
Mm-hmm.
I believe that many people don't even think that far. They just see the mascot walking around, doing whatever, and not everything that goes into it, which is, the great part about doing this today. You started just as being Viktor the mascot.
Mm-hmm.
You then also at some point joined the cheer team, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
How did that impact you performing as Viktor?
Yeah, so when I first started in high school, it was kind of like a separate entity. So it was like, here's Viktor, and then here's everyone else. And then in October 2022, I signed on as the first official mascot performer. So Stacy Horton was there, President Keck was actually at the signing, and we kind of wanted to incorporate Viktor more often. They realized, hey, we have someone who's very passionate in doing this. How can we make that engagement higher? So we started with, I would learn a few sideline cheers, and then we started doing where Viktor takes place in the homecoming halftime show. So I'd go to practices with the cheer and dance team, learning the choreography, learning all of my movements and blocking. So we've gotten to the point now where we kind of all see Viktor with the cheer and dance team. It's not a separate, Viktor's going to do his own thing and then cheer and dance over here. It's how can we collaborate as much as possible to create that fan engagement, which is the main point of being a mascot.
Was there always a passion for cheer, dance, that sort of movement, I guess, in you that made you want to do that? Because it's probably a big step from doing more regular mascot stuff to doing actual performances.
Yeah, so a lot of the mascotting stuff, besides that choreography and dance portion is a lot of improv based. So it's how can I react to a certain situation. So if someone drops something in front of me, what is a funny way I can interact with them where they're laughing, other people are laughing, and just kind of transitioning into the dance side of it. So in middle school, I participated in show choir and participated in musical theater. So I had that dancing experience. Elementary school, middle school was on a competition dance team. So I had that experience in the back of me, and it was just how can I incorporate that into Viktor. So whether that's like in the touchdown, like in the end zone when we score a touchdown, doing some little dance compared to now where Viktor's doing whole performances with the team, we realized that I may not be the best dancer, but I can definitely learn some things that we can put out onto the field and show our fans and show our community. So once we got past that, I think it made Viktor look a lot more effective and make Viktor more engaging, but also just made our spirit squad as a whole more engaging.
So that passion to do a bit more than just being a mascot, that was kind of always there for you.
Yeah, I think it's just, I've always been a fan of sports. Obviously, as a kid, played as many sports as I could. And then going into high school, taking on that more theatrical performance aspect. So finding ways to combine them and saying, I love sports. I'm not going to be playing in the sport, but how can I still incorporate myself? So one big thing in the past few years has been the collaboration with the football team. So I have been at every home football game since 2019, and I have found ways to interact with the players. Have even celebrated in the end zone when they score. I'll be running down there, a little chest bump, a little side bump, whatever we can get in there. But also just finding other ways outside of football, traveling with the team. So I went to the 2021 National Championship with football, 2024 National Championship, and 2025. So going to North Carolina and Texas with the team. Obviously, I'm not with the team 24/7, traveling on our own planes, own way, but being able to share that moment with those guys who have worked so hard to get there is just incredible.
Oh, I bet it is. I bet. I want to, learn a bit more about the interaction you just talked about. How is that communicated? What are you allowed to do? What are you also maybe not allowed to do?
Yeah, so when we first started, Viktor was just on the sidelines, wouldn't be moving around much, would maybe go from like end zone to end zone on the sidelines. Then we kind of realized, hey, Viktor can move around. So we'd have Viktor closer to the athletes on the football field, in the end zones, obviously not on the field, but behind the end zones. And there's still some sports, obviously, like for men's volleyball, specifically in women's volleyball, Viktor can't be behind the court on the same side as the opponent, on our opponent's side, but can be on the home side. So there's been a little bit of intricate details we've had to figure out and fine-tune that haven't caused any issues. But there's also, when we get to the 2025 NAIA Football Championship, there were those extra rules. So I couldn't be near the players, and I couldn't be on the sideline directly with them. I had to be outside the 25 on each side. So there's going to be some times where if I'm traveling, I have to learn different abilities and where I can be, where I can't be. But a lot of the interaction is with the players, sometimes with the coaches. Football team has their chaplain Barr, who loves Viktor. So he'll find Viktor every time he can, give Viktor a hug. So just kind of finding those little engagements that we can do just brightens everyone's day.
What exactly, is that a player?
So he basically prays for the team.
Oh, okay.
So he will do the prayer before the game, and then he'll be on the sidelines kind of encouraging the players.
I see.
But all I remember was every single game he'll try and find a way to come up to me, and he'll just say he'll just be like, Viktor, how you doing? And always just brightens my day, being my job is to make other people laugh and make other people smile. But having someone that's that same supporter for me, it's great.
Your job is to make other people's days, to make to brighten up their day. On the other side, or not on the other side, next to that, you're going to be an elementary teacher.
Mhm.
That kind of overlaps, I feel like.
Yes.
Having an impact. Mascots probably often engage also with like younger people. Is that something that like is a guiding thing in your life, that you just like to have an impact on younger people?
Yeah, so I've made that connection a lot with other people, is that mascotting is like teaching in ways. The biggest strategy I've learned is that nonverbal communication. There's going to be times in the classroom where there will be a student messing around or misbehaving, and you have to basically show them that what you're doing is not what you're supposed to be doing. So those nonverbal ways to communicate are important. But I also think just the energy. I think if you are on the sidelines or if you're in the classroom trying to interact with the youth, you have to find a way to get to their level. So you have to find a way to be more engaging, but also kind of like have that side of your child in you. Have a way where it's like, I can connect with you on this way. Obviously, if I'm teaching you, we're not going to be buddy-buddy, but we also want that community where the students are feeling valued in the classroom. So connecting with them on a personal level. Sometimes you have to do that little goofy thing that's going to get them paying attention and get them on your side. But overall, you just want to be the supporter for the students, just like mascotting is the supporter for the athletes and the fans.
The nonverbal communication, is that sometimes hard, or are you just so used to it? Because in my head, whenever I interact with mascots, I feel like there must be such a strong urge to sometimes just blur out something random to just like scare people or make them, oh, what's going on now? You know what I mean?
Yeah, so I think honestly that was one thing that came very natural to me, was the nonverbal, like keeping quiet. But I've also learned there's a power to that nonverbal communication, as that you can make someone laugh way more without saying anything than you could with saying a whole paragraph of words. So there is kind of that little toughness where if I'm trying to communicate like, hey, Victor's got to go this way, there's not a lot of easy ways to communicate that verbally. So having to just be like, hey, I got to go, without saying it. It can be tricky, but also it's kind of a game of charades. So every game or every community event on campus, finding ways to communicate with people without talking. Obviously, they can talk back to me, but I can't just be like, hey, this is what I meant when I did that. It's more like, how can I show what I'm trying to tell the person without actually telling them?
Did it alter the way you express yourself with like gestures and stuff?
I think I talk a lot more with gestures because it's that natural way of communicating. I think sometimes I also just forget how to communicate things verbally, and I'm like, so what time is it? And I'll instead just point to my like wrist like it's a watch. So sometimes I've learned that nonverbal communication can be more effective than verbal communication, but having those together outside of the costume and in the classroom is way more beneficial than just saying, hey, go do this, without telling them, what is this? Like not pointing, not gesturing. So just kind of finding ways to incorporate both verbal and nonverbal, while mascotting is only that nonverbal. So you got to strengthen those nonverbal skills to be able to communicate with the community.
Coming back from the classroom to you performing as Viktor, you recently, just a couple of weeks ago, went to the NCAA Mascot Nationals, basically, right? Which is super exciting. The only person representing an NAIA school there, among all universities, D1, like all levels. Yeah, that's kind of like, I guess, the pinnacle of the college mascot performing scene. Yeah. How was that experience?
It truly was just crazy. I think we started working on the routine in November, coming up with ideas, then creating an audio draft. Then we had to bring that to an audio engineer. Once that was brought to the audio engineer, it was time to build the props. So we had to build the props, learn choreography, learn costuming, and then we had to record that video, submit it for qualification. Once we received the results on February 2nd, Viktor placed 3rd out of the 13 qualifications and was the only NAI mascot, like you said. So once we got that qualification, we were like, Victor's actually going to go to this competition. We kind of saw that as a dream, first off, because our goal was just to get there. And so once we received the qualification, we made slight adjustments. We worked at performing at the Skullfest talent show on campus, Grandview's cheer and dance home competition, the Heart of America Conference Championship, performing there, and then we took it there. So once we were there, it was honestly a surreal experience. That's one of the highlights of my mascot career so far, was being able to share that same stage with all those other mascots. So at the 2026 NCAA Collegiate Mascot Nationals, we had 19 total mascots there. We performed all on the same stage, and then we all did awards together. And so Victor placed, would have been 14th out of the 18 or 19 mascots. When you break down the scores, Victor had a score of 8th place overall in characterization and 11th in prop design and effect. So being able to share those stage with those D1 mascots was honestly awesome. One of our main goals going down was to see where can we place, which D1 mascots can we compete with. And Victor placed 14th, and then Cy from the Iowa State University placed 16th. So it was pretty surreal to think 2 Iowa mascots who, like, I'm the only mascot performer at Grandview. I had my family help me make this project, compared to Iowa State, where they have a group of 5 to 8 mascot performers, and their team is the one who builds the props, makes the things, and they've been here before, so they know what to expect. Compared to me, where this is the first time we've qualified, first time we've competed, we didn't know what was going to happen. So it honestly, sharing that stage with those mascots was just insane. I think there's not a lot of words to describe it, because it's something that, looking back, when I was 14, I never expected we would be traveling to Florida to compete as a mascot. It was just, it's an experience I will never forget. I think even backstage, sharing the moments with the other mascot performers, just learning about their programs, learning about what they do, what their goals are, it was just awesome to see the differences between them all, but how we're all together for the same goal of just engaging with our campuses, engaging with the community, and just performing our hearts out. So it was pretty sweet.
It is truly an incredible achievement, and now you giving the backstory of how the mascotting looks at other universities, and then you coming in from probably maybe even the smallest, definitely one of the smallest universities, not a crazy team of that. It's probably in other universities like a own like department, the whole mascoting, and you just kind of do that by yourself. You said your family helped you a lot. That is an insane achievement.
Yeah.
So congratulations again.
Thank you so much.
And what I do find super interesting though is you always refer to you being the Victor, the mascot, as Victor, not as me. And then you also say we made it happen.
Yeah.
So I have 2 questions there. Why is it never me and always Victor, and who is we?
Yeah, I think one thing that I look at it as, I'm not Victor and Victor's not me. Obviously, Victor represents the university, and there are ways that I represent the university, but I would not be going to this competition without Victor. Same way as without a performer as Victor, Victor wouldn't be at the competition. So I see them as kind of 2 different things, because when I'm in costume and when I'm performing, I don't feel like it's Jacob performing. I feel like it's Victor. It's almost like another body, kind of. You put it on, and immediately it's like, it's game day, put your game face on, let's go. So I think that's one reason why I kind of separate them. But at the same time, it is a joint effort. There's so much support at Grandview for Victor, and the support comes from people who don't even know who I am. People don't know, oh, we're supporting Jacob. No, we're supporting Victor, because Victor is that visible aspect on campus. So I think that's been the big thing, as without Victor, I wouldn't be where I'm at. But without all the progress and all the, I'm not going to say perfection, because there's things that we can always perfect more, but without the hard work that's gone into that, Viktor wouldn't be where it's at either.
And who's we?
I think we think of it as a team. I think there's so many people in my corner, especially like we talked about my family. Without my family helping with the performance, I wouldn't have been able to compete. I wouldn't have been able to qualify. But it's also to the fact where my family's been there since the very beginning. The reason why I got into this position was through my family. And we have traveled to so many different states. Viktor's performed in 7 states as my time as the performer. So I'm always with him. We look at it, it's kind of Viktor's village a little bit, as we have Viktor, and then we have kind of that community, basically my family around Viktor, as what props do we need to make? Do we need to buy this clothing item, and then figure out like what kind of costume are we doing? So like when we have for the NAIA football playoffs, we did a few certain things. So we dressed up Viktor like a coach. We had to make a hoodie, had to put coach on it. We dressed him up like a snowman, had to get the stuff for that. So finding different ways to keep me involved and me engaged, but also keep my family involved. I think that's more the we, is that there's so many people supporting Viktor that it's not just I'm the only one. There's so many people that need to be there, or else we wouldn't have the success that we have. And we wouldn't have ever thought that Viktor's going to compete at the national stage. That would have never been a thought 4 to even 7 years ago without the support of the community at Grandview.
And now with Viktor being where he's at, you spoke about it, how it's like when you step into that costume, game mode comes on. I guess it's really like an altered personality for you. Can you talk a little bit more about what exactly that is, how that looks like?
Yeah, I think a lot of mascots have a lot of different characteristics. So even in Iowa, we have so many mascots at the collegiate or semi-pro level, and each of them has a different personality, just like any other person does. So finding the personality of how is Viktor going to interact in this type of situation. So we, as in myself mostly, took a lot of time figuring out what is Viktor's personality. Obviously, that comes from experience, just being out there in costume, but it's also just thinking the backstory behind Viktor. Obviously, we don't know Viktor's parents. We don't know where Viktor's come from, but kind of creating that sort of backstory in my head as how do I perceive myself as Viktor? So Viktor's obviously not he's not a teddy bear where he's just, he's lovable and huggable. But he's this mascot that has a strong presence, where he's going to kind of be that passionate, that hardworking, kind of that gritty mascot, but also he has a soft side. Like he's not going to interact the same way he would interact with one of our student athletes with a 5-year-old. So figuring out different ways to interact with those fans, I think, is crucial.
That's interesting. Now, next to being Viktor, you also performed as the mascot for the Iowa Barnstormers and also for the Iowa Cubs. Fun fact there, I actually think that I took a picture with you with a friend at the opening game.
I think you did.
Yeah.
Felipe was there. Felipe actually, he worked for the Iowa Cubs last year.
Yeah.
So it was so fun seeing him while in costume for the Cubs.
Yeah, and he also threw a pitch. So yeah, pretty cool experience, definitely. How does that compare to being Viktor, being the mascot for those professional teams?
I think without my performance as Viktor, I wouldn't be a mascot for another team. So I first started out as Viktor, and then right after COVID, I was reached out to by an Iowa Barnstormers representative that was looking for a mascot to bring back after the pandemic. And they graduated from Grandview, and they reached out and they said, we think this would be a good position for you. So I was with the Barnstormers for a season, and then I kind of wanted to venture out and I wanted to see where else could I perform as. And so I reached out to the Cubs and said I would be interested in performing as your mascot, because I learned that originally it was an intern-based system, so they didn't have one specific person. It was their team of stadium operations interns. So I reached out and said, this is something I'd be interested in. And they were fully on board. So the first season, again, was same way with Viktor when I was 14. We had to get used to it, got to get used to what does pregame look like? What do suites visits look like? What are the promotions and interactions that I have? And we've gotten to the point where I'm able to plan certain events like Cubby's birthday. We went from having 4 mascots my first year to having 15 mascots. And we were able to do a lot more pregame stuff. We had like a gift for Cubby. So finding ways to honestly just get more experience, I think, has been crucial.
What do you mean when you say from 4 to 15 mascots?
So in my first year at Cubby's birthday, we had a total of 4 other mascots in attendance. And my biggest goal was...
From different teams?
Yes. So we had the Iowa Wolves mascot, the UNI Panthers mascot, the Iowa Barnstormers mascot, and the Adventureland mascot. So my biggest goal was, how can we make this event higher so that it's more engaging for the mascot performers, but also Cubby's birthday takes place at the same time as like Family and Faith Day. So how can we make that more engaging for our fans? And the big thing was, let's get more mascots involved. So myself and the Iowa Cubs reached out to multiple different mascots and different organizations, and we brought in a lot of collegiate mascots. We brought in a lot of the Des Moines semi-professional mascots, and we even brought in the 2025 Sports Illustrated High School Mascot of the Year. So it was pretty surreal to walk onto the field with all the other mascots and see the progress we made from my first year to the second year, where we made this big process, we had this big idea, and then look how it came out. So it was just pretty surprising, honestly, to see the growth. But we're already looking into this year's birthday, figuring out what can we improve, what are some ways that we can make it better, and it's honestly just exciting. It's always revolving, and it never stops. It's always, what can we improve and make this better in any aspect of mascotting?
That's so cool to hear, and something I hear a lot when talking with people who have a passion for something and also like to put in a lot of work into it, that there's outcomes that are actually pretty cool. Yeah, so that's cool to hear. How is it different to work for, say, the Cubs in comparison to Grandview?
Yeah, I think at the Cubs, it's a AAA minor league baseball team. So the atmosphere is first off different, but second off, it's a lot about the structure. So for community appearances, I'm basically reference to them. So the Cubs receive the community appearance, they send it to me. Are you available? Yes, I'm available. And then we go through that. Where Grandview is, I request a lot of my own appearances. So I work with athletics and figure out, hey, women's basketball has a senior day this day, and then I could also do men's basketball senior day the same day. Would it be possible for Viktor to go to both of those? So I do a lot of the scheduling on my own side as Viktor, so working with athletics, of course. But I think the big thing is scheduling and structure, but also is just the engagement side of it. You compare it to a semi-professional team in Des Moines and one of the most widely known teams in Iowa, to Grandview, which is that small NAIA school aesthetic, basically. And there's going to be differences. The community may all know Cubby, but may not know Viktor. On the same end, if you look at anyone here on campus, they're going to know who Viktor is, but may not know Cubby, because our campus is so diverse. We have students coming in from different countries, different states, who have never heard of the Iowa Cubs. So I think that's one big thing is Grandview has such a close community and such a great climate where we all support each other and we know who everyone is, compared to at the Iowa Cubs, where it's like, on the big scheme of things, it's a minor league baseball team. However, there's still those little interactions where I meet with like season ticket holders and they're so excited to see Cubby that day. It's just, there's different experiences, and neither one is better or worse, but it's just different.
Is there an added element of pressure when working for a higher profile institution like a minor league baseball team?
At first, I thought there was going to be a lot more pressure, but I think the trust that the organization put into me as the mascot performer definitely weighed it down. I think if I would have walked in and they would have been like, I don't know about this guy, and I don't know what he's going to bring to the table, but after that first season, we have staff members who know me by name and not as the mascot. And they're like, you did a great job this season. We're so excited to see what next season holds. So when I first had my first game, I was very worried. I didn't want to do anything wrong, didn't want to make anyone upset. But then once we get into the season, I was like, I feel very comfortable. And it's a very judgment-free zone. Because your first season, you don't know what to expect. They don't know what to expect of you at the same time. So building that trust, building that connection definitely helped.
Yeah, it is a weird dynamic because on one hand, it's like you're never really attached to what the mascot is doing because no one knows who it is, kind of. But at the same time, you're also in that skin.
Yeah.
Talking about that skin, how hot is it in there?
I get that all the time. I think my first year it was very hot. So my first few years, we traveled down to Kansas for like opening weekend for football games. And it would be like 100-degree heat. And it was the worst. There were some games where I almost felt like I was going to pass out. And I was like, maybe we step out of the costume today. Where now we've gotten to the point where it's August. And if I'm with Grandview or if I'm with the Iowa Cubs, I know where my limits are. I know when I need to take a break. And honestly, it doesn't affect me as much. I think definitely the weight of the costumes sometimes can be a lot. Some costumes can range to like 10 to even like 30 to 40 pounds. So I think sometimes you worry about, is the weather going to make me feel a certain way? But once you've been in the costume long enough, you know your agility, you know where you're going to be. It's just how are you going to keep that consistency throughout the entire event.
And also on that topic, how is it like with visibility through the costume?
It's rough. I think each costume has a different way you can view. So some costumes you'll be viewing through the actual eyes of the costume, sometimes the nose, sometimes the mouth, sometimes it's mesh in the neck itself, neck and throat. So it's not great visibility. So the big thing is just being self-aware of, obviously, if you're a bigger costume, you're going to need a lot more space to get around compared to if the costume is just right on your body, it's like barely a second layer, you can basically navigate your way. So I think once you learn the best ways to go around the vision, there's going to be some times where I'm going to be looking straight ahead if I'm walking somewhere, but if I'm worried about like knocking into someone, I have to look all the way around, even behind me sometimes. So that little area of vision hits every box that I need to because I don't have peripheral vision. I can't just stand there and be like, oh, I can see this person right here. It's more like all I can see is directly ahead of me, so I have to navigate which way I need to look.
Yeah, that's another dimension where it's like, it makes so much sense when you talk about it, but it's like no one ever thinks about that, right? And how important maybe is it to have a person with you kind of to, I guess, also interfere in certain situations?
Yeah, so in the mascot world, we have mascot handlers. Another word is like a trailer. So basically, they are kind of the mouth of whatever mascot it is. So they communicate with people and because they have that verbal communication. So having someone right beside, sometimes it's not needed. If I'm at a smaller event, sometimes I won't need someone to be right beside me. But on those busier nights where it's packed and I can't get through somewhere, it is helpful to have someone behind me and figure out which way do I need to go here. Could you hand me a marker so I can sign this thing? Can you please take this photo for a fan? So having someone beside me is definitely beneficial.
That makes sense. I want to stay on the topic of those fan interactions because that is obviously a great power of a mascot. And I was wondering if there is any one or maybe more interactions you had that totally stick out to you because they were so memorable.
So I think there's on both sides of that. There's some that are memorable because it was just that great of a moment, and there's some that were memorable as it did not go well at all. How can we make sure that doesn't happen again? So I think the most memorable times is honestly when it's with kids and it's the most absurd things they want me to sign. So I have signed umbrellas, I've signed hats, I've signed shoes, a lot of Crocs. I've signed whatever ball is it. I think the most interesting was working with the Iowa Cubs. A fan had me sign their St. Louis Cardinals jersey, which that's a big rivalry there. And I had a look at the dad and I was like, are you sure? Because I didn't want it to backfire later on. And they're like, why did he sign this when it's obviously not the right team? So with the dad's approval, signed it, even made a little joke that was just go Cubs with like 3 exclamation marks. So I think that's one thing that's very noticeable. But it's also the unique things that you wouldn't expect something to happen. So whenever Viktor's out at the Iowa State Fair, we usually receive about 20 comments per day that says, oh, look, it's Santa. And it's like, that's not Santa. But finding out those little fan interactions, especially at this year's Iowa State Fair, I got into a push-up contest with a kid. And this kid's probably around 7 years old. And I was like, well, I don't know what to expect. I don't know if this kid's going to put up 5 push-ups or if this kid's going to put up 50. And we both got to 30. And the kid just looks at me and he's like, I think I'm done right now. And I was like, I'm glad we're done. I don't know how much more we could have gotten with me in the costume. So it's always those little things that you wouldn't expect to happen that are the most memorable.
You kind of spoke about the both sides. Maybe, though, there is also situations you said that you learned from. Is there anything in particular in terms of a difficult situation, something that didn't go well, from which you took away a lot too?
I think a lot of them are just sometimes you don't know what to expect from fans. You don't know, obviously, what they're going through and what their background is. So sometimes there will be fans who will come up to you and are upset about the outcome of the game or whatever you're doing. And even though I don't have a direct impact, I'm wearing the team's logo right on me. So interacting with them and figuring out as I'm just here. I'm just the mascot, but I can find a way to make sure you have an enjoyable experience is, I think, one thing. I think a lot of them are, vision's one of them. Early on, I didn't see any kids that were below the stomach. So looking down to make sure I'm not just trucking kids constantly was important. But it's also just the little things that there's sometimes where a kid really wanted a photo, wasn't able to get a photo, and I had to come back later on. And sometimes the kid would still be frustrated. They're like, why didn't you take a photo earlier? And it's like, I had to get somewhere. But finding ways that you can mitigate those situations, but also provide a quality experience for whoever is at that event, I think helps bridge that gap.
Learning all that, and then also the performance aspect, which you've added to yourself being a mascot. And I guess everything that you were able to incorporate into that role as a mascot and all the experience you've gained through it, what would you say makes a good mascot?
I think you've got to make people laugh. I think without the comedical side of mascotting, you lose a lot of engagement. So I think making people laugh, but also making people feel like you are a safe place. These people who are coming up to you, giving you hugs, just interacting with you, they don't know who's inside the costume. So finding ways to engage those fans. Sometimes we have fans who are scared of mascots. So finding ways to kind of go to their level. So if it's a younger kid, maybe take a knee or sit on the ground and just invite them over. Not force them, just say, if you want to interact, I'm right here. So there are those moments that I have where it's difficult, but you learn how to get through it. And interacting with some fans is going to be a little bit trickier than others, but it's also, that's what makes it unique.
So the way you interact with fans is the most important quality as a mascot?
I think it's one of them. I think fan engagement is crucial because if you're not engaging with the fans, a lot of people are just going to be like, What is that mascot doing? So fan engagement's one, but I also think just being unique. I think there's some things that mascots do that stick out a lot compared to other mascots. So whether that's some mascots have certain props that they use. One big thing is Benny the Bull with Chicago Bulls throws around popcorn every single game. Toro with the Houston Texans uses like props where it's like a football that looks like it's coming at you, but it's on a string, so it pulls back. So those unique aspects of what are some things that I do as a mascot that other people don't do as a mascot. And on that same aspect is visibility is crucial for being a mascot. So if you're a mascot but no one knows where you're at the entire event, what are you doing? So making sure that you're visible for fans or whoever's at the event and doing what you need to do. You're always in character. If you're in costume, there's never an off switch. There's no bench as a mascot. You can't just be like, we're going to let the sub come in. It's you're the one person, you have to keep going.
What makes you unique in your mascot roles?
I think it's the passion. I think there's a lot of mascots where they'll focus on what they can do for the fans compared to how can you support the fans or support the athletes. So I think my big thing and my big goal as Viktor is to create that environment where I'm supporting not just our athletes, but also the community as a whole. When we have our on-campus events, like our Skull Fest, our homecoming, Victory Day, whatever we can provide is keeping those fans engaged, keeping people engaged, even if I've never met them before, just creating a positive experience.
When we scheduled doing this, you had one sentence that kind of stuck with me that you wrote, and it was, I believe mascots play a crucial role in the sports industry. Mm-hmm. What makes you say that?
I think a mascot is the perfect connector between the fans and the athletes. I think when you think of that ballpark or that stadium experience, you can't obviously go up to a player and talk with them or interact with them. But a mascot you can do, and that's what's encouraged to do, is interacting with the mascot. So obviously, without sports, we wouldn't have mascots. We wouldn't have that environment to support not only the athletes and to support the team themselves, but also those community appearances where you might not have the starting quarterback or the starting pitcher at an event, but the mascot's there, and that is a unique way for fans to engage with the team that they support without directly with a player.
And that is, as you said, for everything, also looking outside from just the game or the superficial things, the value of the brand, everything that is also on a more economical level, that is obviously such a big part of that, and I definitely see that point, which makes it so valuable to the whole organization. Mm-hmm. I had this thought come up into my head, and you have to bear with me here for a second, because when you're in that mascot role, you obviously have a lot of people coming towards you. Mm-hmm. You kind of step into like this fictional character that is very popular. Mm-hmm. Many people want to be popular, they want to have, I don't know, followers on Instagram, fans, whatever it is. Would you say being a mascot gives you kind of a taste of how it is to be a popular person?
I think in a way, yes. I think sometimes with mascots, they are the center of attention. So when I'm at a community event, if I'm at a school visit, a lot of people are going to look at everyone else and go, well, there's a teacher, there's a person in a costume. And even if they don't recognize that's a person in a costume, they're like, that's something unique. That's a draw. So there are those appearances that I go to where I am the main attraction. I am what people are excited to see, take photos with, take autographs. But at the same time, like we talked about earlier, it's not Jacob who's the main attraction. It's the mascot that I'm portraying. So I think that's the critical part is, yes, there is some times where it feels like I'm the highlights are on, like it's whatever mascot I am. But deep down it's just a person in the costume. And they're going to make mistakes. I'm going to do some things that maybe someone might not see as the correct response or might not see as the best way of dealing with the situation. However, as a person, like everyone else, we grow and we learn and we figure out what to do next time.
Is that a feeling, though, that kind of excites you for the next time to have those lights on the mascots? Is that like something that excites you?
Yeah, I think when we're in the off seasons for certain sports, I look back and I think, I'm so excited for that sport to be back. I'm so excited to be back in costume. I think with the Iowa Cubs, we have our off season. So we were hitting like December, January, thinking about ideas for the season. And I was kind of like, I just want to be back out there. I want to be in front of the fans. I want to provide that experience to the fans. And I think the waiting makes it even better. I think without that off season, first off, you're going to be drained. You're going to be physically and mentally drained. But that off season gives you that time to just think, what can we do next time? How can we build up this season to be even better than the last? So that waiting portion, that just the calm before the storm is a way I like to put it, makes you more excited for that event or for that season.
That makes a lot of sense. I guess that is similar to even playing sports. If I never had a break, I'd probably also say, okay, at some point we're good. But yeah, no, that's I think it's an interesting dynamic that just became apparent to me now that we're speaking, because obviously you're gonna be the center of attention. But as you said, it's not really you, which is, I guess that's kind of cool, because you have that experience, but you also can live a normal life. Like, you don't go around as a mascot and are just like an attraction everywhere. It's just in some instances. I feel like that's a pretty cool balancing of experience, but also of just living life.
Yeah, I think that's what makes it pretty sweet, is that Saturday home game, everyone's excited to see Viktor. What is Viktor going to do? Is Viktor going to do a celebration? Is Viktor going to do a dance with a cheer team or dance team? But then when it comes to Monday, Viktor's not there. It's just me in classes or on campus at meetings. So I think that is a great part of it, is that it builds a lot of confidence in me outside the costume as well, is that a lot of things that I've done have created a positive impact on someone, and it's left a positive impact on me as well. But then once it hits that Monday or that Tuesday, I'm not in costume anymore. And I think that's one struggle at the very beginning is I feel very confident, I feel bold. There's a lot of things that you can get away with as a mascot that you wouldn't think about. So I think one big thing is there are some things that I can do on the field. Like, I can run around on the field, I can run around with a flag, I can do things with props. But without that costume, you look kind of crazy if you're down there doing some of that stuff. So I think the costume adds that layer of confidence that can go on and transform into myself as Jacob. But without that experience, it's just a normal Monday. It's just a normal weekday or whatever day it is where I'm not in costume. I'm as myself. I have those memories, but that's not who I am that day.
The confidence you speak about that you have in the costume, it is still something you have to be able to do to translate that into your life. I could also imagine that people have a lot of confidence in the mascot, but then when they leave that costume, that just is taken away. How were you able to keep that confidence, or even use the gained confidence in your life outside of being a mascot?
I think it was just growing into it. I think at first you don't really think about being a mascot can give you confidence outside the costume. So the first few years, it just kind of felt like it was a separate thing. And it was from these 4 hours, I'm in costume. Besides that, I have no relation to the costume. While now it's mascotting is just a daily thing for me. Every single day I find something that's like, how could I do it for this next event? How can I connect with this mascot, the networking behind it? Because there are so many mascot performers. We talk about like the sports industry with mascots, but with other corporations, with businesses, there's so many mascots. So finding those ways where I'm outside the costume, but I still feel confident helps me because I am always involved with mascotting. Like with being a mascot performer or a handler, I find ways even in the off season to still contribute to the mascot industry.
With you saying that it's kind of a daily thing for you now, something that was on my mind the whole time when you spoke about being a mascot here, there, and there, how does your schedule look like?
I think I strive on being busy, and that's something that in the costume or outside the costume has always been true. I love finding those little things to connect, whether that's student leadership on campus, whether that's volunteer work, whether that's working for a different organization. The big thing is time management. So I run a strict schedule on my phone where I make sure everything's documented. It doesn't matter, like, sometimes it's even, when do I need to leave the house? I'll put that on the calendar. So having that scheduling really helps. But I think it's also just the flexibility that with everything I do, there's going to be some times where I'm going to have a great day and some days where I'm not going to have a great day. But the fact that I'm doing all this makes an impact on more than just me.
Yeah, it definitely does. And that's probably one of the coolest parts, I guess, about being a mascot is that you're able to have such a big impact on people outside. And looking forward now, you're set to graduate fairly soon. Once you start working a full-time job, how are you going to be able to integrate mascotting into your life then, or is that even a plan of yours?
I think it's something I've thought about. I think I've been asked very often, are you going to do this professionally? Like, is this going to be your job? And obviously, the door is always open. The door is always something that I'm never going to close. If mascotting pops up 10 years from now, I'll take on whatever I need to. But there's still little ways that I can connect. So one big thing is in school districts, even though I would be an elementary school teacher, is that if a school district has a mascot, finding a way to be some sort of mentor to the mascot there, whether that's at the school district I'm at or being a part of hosting maybe clinics or camps for mascots. So there are certain ways where even after I leave Grandview or after I leave organizations, I can still be encouraged to participate with other mascots.
That's super cool, and also something I feel like I don't hear for the first time that when once you found that thing, the most recent thing that pops to my head is when I spoke with Grace about dance the other day, that this part of like, I might not be doing the exact thing for my whole life, but I'll definitely stay connected to it for probably the rest of my life. And that is pretty cool if you have a passion for something like that.
Yeah, I think mascotting is such a niche topic. There's not a lot of people who wake up one day and go, I want to be a mascot. So finding that community, networking with other mascots, being involved in type of conversations as, what are you doing at your program? How can we incorporate that here? It's something that you can always grow as a performer. There's never a point where you get to the top and you're like, there's nothing else I can do. I've done it all. There's always something that you can improve on. So even looking into next year, when I graduate, how are we going to keep Viktor that big of a presence on campus? I think that's something we're going to look into. Maybe that's recruiting. Maybe that's hosting mascot camps. However that may be, finding ways that we can keep that legacy going.
Which, is definitely in the best interest of the school. Is there already a plan to have someone succeed you?
At this time, no. It's a little bittersweet in that way that I've done a lot that a lot of people would have been like, why would you do that? Like, why would you put on a mascot costume? Why would you do this? Why would you do that? Why would you travel across the country for a championship game? And I hope we find someone that has that same passion. Whether that's someone who may be a 14-year-old high schooler who doesn't have any relation to Grandview and finds this opportunity and says, well, maybe this is something I could do in college. Just finding someone that is passionate is going to be tough, and because there's not like a camp you go to where it's like, oh, we're going to have scouts. We're not going to be scouting mascots somewhere, but finding ways that maybe we look into recruiting. Maybe we look into, hey, just try it out once and maybe it'll stick. Maybe we'll have a performer who will do it their entire time at Grandview, or maybe it ends up going back to volunteering. I think what's crucial is just keeping the visibility. Having Viktor be a member where, like this year for Skullfest, I was in costume for 16 hours. I did a lot that day. And finding someone who, maybe they're not going to be as passionate like that, but they still are passionate to keep the brand consistent and even maybe make it further than I did. Maybe they have some certain goals for the mascot that they can continue on that I maybe have never thought of.
And yeah, I guess with having someone as passionate as you, that's probably a very good advertisement to maybe get someone in there. Yeah, towards the end of every episode, I always have a question, and I'm really excited to hear from you on that specific question, because you are very busy. You decide to be very busy, which I think is a quality that a lot of people have that want to achieve something. You're outstanding in school. I don't think I've ever seen a LinkedIn profile as stacked as yours.
That's one of my big pros. I think if my LinkedIn didn't show everything, I'd be doing a disservice to myself with, I am busy that often. Let's show it off. And not in a way of, oh, this is where I am, this is where everyone else isn't. It's in a way of just, I'm proud of what I do. I'm proud of everything I've contributed, and it is fun to look back on it and kind of use LinkedIn as like a portfolio, as in, this is everything I've done, and I'm proud of every single aspect of it.
Where does that drive come from?
I think it comes from, family is one big thing. I think my family has always been supportive and just passionate that if you find something that really interests you and that you are passionate about, go for it. And it's never that just give 50% into it. It's you go big or go home. So either you will give everything you can to that one thing, or it's maybe not worth doing. So I think the big thing is passion from the family. But I think also just seeing other people be passionate about things is just inspiring to me. There are some people who are passionate about maybe the littlest things. Maybe it's super niche, super unique, but they're passionate about it. And that just makes me feel even more just happy with how passionate I've been regarding mascotting.
Coming to the final question, and maybe you've touched on it a little bit already, we'll see. The question is, what is the best piece of advice you've ever heard or received?
I think the big thing is just experience. I think with that busyness, I've done so much, and sometimes maybe I didn't think it would work out very well. And there's some moments where I look back and be like, maybe that wasn't the right experience for me, but it's still something that taught me something. So whether that's experience in the field you're going into, or anyone involved in sports in general, just being active, finding ways that maybe you want to be a commentator, but maybe you want to start with just a media internship where you can learn some of those things to get to that level. I think experience is crucial in whatever career field you're going into, sports or not. So I think experience is one, and then I think networking. There's no better way to learn more about your career field than talking and communicating with people who are already in that field. Whether that's people who are just starting and want your advice, or that's people who have been in mascotting for, or whatever career, for 40 plus years and know certain things that I've never even thought of. So I think networking experience is the best way, especially in sports, but in everything, to get your name out there. Even if it's not the correct experience, it's still experience that will teach you something.
Yeah, I don't think in terms of experience there's correct or incorrect experience. Yeah. No, that is definitely something, experience and networking, that will get you in a cool position, as you can see with you. Jacob, thank you so much for sharing all that today. That was a very unique perspective, as I said in the beginning, turned out to be true. I appreciate you for sharing all of that. That was really, really cool to hear and to listen to what you have to say. I think that anybody who decides to listen to that is definitely going to gain a lot of insights into a completely new world of sports, and that's the most exciting part about doing this. So thank you very much for being here today.
I think there's so much you can learn from people, and I think what you've done with the podcast is something that it shows passion, and it just shows what it all takes to get to that level. So I think what you're doing is great, and I love watching it. I love hearing from the other athletes, either on campus or however they're involved. I love it from my end, so I appreciate the conversation.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to this episode of The World of Sports. I hope this conversation sparked your interest in sports and the people behind it. If you enjoyed this episode, feel free to share it with a friend and leave me some feedback in the comments. Once again, thanks for joining me in the world of sports.